Commissioner Dermody, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
There
Excellent.
we go.
We can hear you and see you.
All right.
I'm
Morning.
going
Seeing's
to
not so good. Seeing's not so good. I don't have any green up, but I wear it every day.
Good morning, Frank.
Good morning.
just so
Okay.
everybody is where we are.
Everybody's
Everybody
ready
is
to roll?
here.
Okay, we've got a full house this morning. I see Papa Kernodles on the phone. Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm David Barish, the chairman of the Pennsylvania Gaming Control Board. Before we begin, I would like to note once again, we're holding this meeting via video conference with the board members and other participants in various locations in furtherance of the directive given by the governor and the Pennsylvania Health Secretary pertaining to social distancing due to the COVID situation. By way of background, on March 11th, 2020, the Commonwealth's Office of Open Records issued an advisory as to how the state and local agencies could conduct themselves in compliance with the Sunshine Act during these unusual times. That advisory provides that under these emergency circumstances, the public business of the Commonwealth can be conducted via teleconference and video conference as long as a mechanism was put in place to allow full public access. We have done that here today by providing public access to the video and audio portions of this meeting through the board's website, as well as by publishing the call-in information for this meeting for those who may not have access to the internet. Additionally, as is always the case, we have a court reporter here who will be transcribing this meeting. We do have a court reporter on the line. Is that correct, Richard?
Yes, the court reporter is here.
Okay, thank you. All that being said, I would always ask that anyone who's going to be called into this meeting to please mute your telephone line to prevent background noise. Also, for those of you who are going to be participating in this meeting, I'd ask that before you speak, please be certain to identify yourself for the court reporter. Okay, with that being said, let's get started. First, some housekeeping. I think it's appropriate now to welcome our newest board members to their first actual public meeting. We have Frank Dermody and Fran Regan, both on the video conference, and I want to welcome you both to the Gaming Control Board. I hope you're going to have as much fun as we've been having.
Thank you, Dan.
Okay, and in addition to that, I'd also like to acknowledge that another board member, Obi Knodel, became a father sometime in the last week or so, and that's another nice addition to our family, huh?
Yes, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. In addition to Commissioners Knodel and Regan, we also have 5 other board members, including myself, as well as ex officio designees. First, I believe we have Fred Strathmeyer representing Russ Redding, the Secretary of Agriculture, Jen Langen representing Stacy Garrity, the new state treasurer, and Kristen Heidingsfelder representing Secretary of Revenue Dan Hassel. Thank you all for joining us today. A quorum of the board being present, I will now call these proceedings to order. First order of business, the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we proceed with the formal agenda, I would like to acknowledge the departure of Commissioner Merritt Reitzel from the board, as her most recent term on the board came to an end sometime between now and our last public session. Unfortunately, because of COVID and the timing of the way these meetings get held, we did not have an opportunity to publicly thank Merritt for her service at our last public session. I think it would be appropriate at a minimum to at least take up a board resolution thanking her for her service at this time. I would note personally that Merritt was a really wonderful member of this board, very active member, a thoughtful member of the board, and I want to personally thank her for her 4 years of contributions to this organization. Having said that, I believe we have a resolution to commemorate Merritt Reitzel's service on the board. If there is such a motion, could someone please propose it at this time?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Mustio moves that the board adopt resolution PGCB 2021-3-EXE honoring Commissioner Merritt Reitzel for her service to this board.
Commissioner Logan seconds.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted. And once again, we thank Merritt Reitzel for her service and wish her the very best of luck in her new career pursuits. By way of announcements, the board held an executive session yesterday, Tuesday, March 16th, to discuss personnel matters and to conduct quasi-judicial deliberations relating to matters that are coming before the board today. This meeting was also done by video conference. Moving ahead, the first thing on our agenda is a public hearing that was supposed to be scheduled this morning. Involving the Cat 4 slot machine license applicant GW Cumberland OP, who had petitioned this board to interject itself into a dispute it was at that time having with Office of Enforcement Counsel. Specifically, the parties had a disagreement as to the appropriate scope of a traffic study that had to be done in conjunction with the applicant's proposed Cat 4 casino to be located just outside of Shippensburg, Pennsylvania. The parties, however, have since in the past week have come to an agreement and have submitted a proposed stipulation of settlement to resolve this matter. GW Cumberland now agrees, as I understand it, to study the expanded area that had been requested by OEC. However, the parties have agreed that GW Cumberland would only be financially responsible for a pro rata portion of any improvements needed in this expanded traffic study area. This area is essentially everything from the half-mile point off of their property line out to the I-81 interchange. The parties also agree that it would be appropriate that this board place an overall dollar cap on the amount of financial monetary liability that could eventually be placed upon GW Cumberland. GW Cumberland would have liked to have had that monetary liability established today. However, the parties have now agreed to defer that decision until the completion of the post-opening traffic count that is part of this agreement. And that's probably 12 to 18 months from now, I believe. With that in the way of background, I would like to get confirmation on the record that my recitation of where things stand is accurate and correct. Mark Stewart, I believe you're on the line as counsel for GW Cumberland. Are you there, Mark?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. I am here.
Yes.
And members of the board.
Okay. And I believe it is my understanding, Mr. Stewart, that what I've just, let me rephrase that. Mr. Stewart, is my understanding your agreement with this settlement. Is that correct?
Correct, Mr. Chairman.
And I've accurately described what the agreement is with the parties?
You have.
Thank you very much. Cyrus Petrie, you're on the phone somewhere, I believe.
Yes, Cyrus Petrie, P-I-T-R-E.
Thank you, Cyrus. Office of Enforcement Counsel also agrees with my description
Yes.
of what your agreement is.
Yes, that's an accurate description.
Thank you, Cyrus. Are there any other questions or comments from the board on this matter at this moment? If not, I'm sorry. Well, based upon that, it appears there's no need to hold a hearing this morning. And what we'll do is to remain consistent with the published agenda. We will bring the settlement agreement as modified up for a vote during the Office of Chief Counsel's portion of this meeting. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving ahead. Next order of business, we have consideration of a motion to approve the transcript and minutes of the January 13th, 2021 meeting. May I have such a motion?
Commissioner Logan moves that the board approve the minutes and transcripts of the January 13th, 2021 meeting.
Commissioner Canola seconds.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted. Next order of business, we have Executive Director Kevin O'Toole. Good morning, Kevin.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the board. On behalf of the staff, I am pleased to welcome Commissioner Reagan and Commissioner Dermody to the board. We look forward to working with both of you. For my Executive Director's report, I would like to focus briefly on several recent events that reflect a positive light on the casino industry in Pennsylvania. Monday of this week, the governor announced several initiatives to reduce the COVID-19 mitigation steps that have been in place for about 9 months now. The initiatives that will benefit casinos relate to increasing capacity for restaurant and casino patronage to 75%, up from 50%. And also allowing alcohol service in the casino facility on a broader scale than previously allowed. It is important to note, in addition to gaming revenue, food and beverage operations is a very important contributor to the overall success of the casinos. Additionally, yesterday, board staff issued its press release for the month of February, detailing the revenue figures for all gaming activity that the board regulates. For the second month in a row, total revenue from all sources exceeded $300 million. Interactive gaming and sports wagering made up approximately 1/3 of the total revenue. With the removal of the restrictions, as noted earlier, land-based casinos will continue to move closer to their benchmarks for measuring success. That is my report for this morning, Chairman. Thank you very much.
Any questions or comments for Kevin at this moment? Hearing none, let's move ahead. Next up is Claire Yantis, Administrative Director, and I'll let you take it from there.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the board. I have the opportunity today to introduce you to Director of the Office of Compulsive and Problem Gambling, Liz Lanza. Liz and her staff are responsible for the oversight of the agency's self-exclusion program and are also instrumental throughout the year in educating and informing the public on the important topic of compulsive and problem gambling. We are before you today specifically to recognize March as Problem Gambling Awareness Month. At this time, I would like to turn the presentation over to Director Lanza, who will present a resolution specifically highlighting the importance of raising awareness on this very important topic. Liz?
Thank you, Claire. Good morning, Chairman and members of the board.
Good morning, Liz.
Good morning. Before you today is a resolution proclaiming March as Problem Gambling Awareness Month, or PGAM. PGAM is a grassroots campaign that promotes the availability of gambling addiction prevention programs, treatment options, and educational materials. The aim of this month-long event is to spread the word that gambling disorder treatment is both available and effective. 2021 marks the 17th anniversary of this Problem Gambling Awareness campaign. As you're well aware, Pennsylvania continues to see growth in the availability of gambling venues statewide. While this expansion has proven to be a sustained success for the Commonwealth, we must remember that there are individuals who face hardship in the form of addiction. It is vital that individuals continue to have access to prevention tools and other programs in order to keep their gambling behavior at a responsible level, and to offer options to those who suffer from the grief caused by gambling addiction. According to the National Council on Problem Gambling, while most adults gamble responsibly for entertainment purposes, approximately 4% of the U.S. population will develop a gambling disorder at some point in their lives. It is crucial for the board to continue to acknowledge the importance of identifying individuals with gambling disorders and providing tools like the board's self-exclusion programs and treatment options to individuals with gambling disorders. Anyone who thinks that they or a loved one may have a gambling problem should call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit the OCPG's website, responsibleplay.org. www.pga.gov to receive the help they need. I would like to thank the board employees and licensees, and our partnering agencies and organizations like the Department of Drug and Alcohol Programs, the Pennsylvania Lottery, and the Council on Compulsive Gambling of Pennsylvania for their dedication to lessening the harmful effects of problem gambling throughout the Commonwealth. I ask the board to adopt the resolution today recognizing March 2021 as Problem Gambling Awareness Month. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. May I have a motion on this matter, please?
Commissioner Novo moves that the board approves the resolution 2021-2-CPG as described by the Director of Compliance and Problem Gambling.
Commissioner Dermody seconds the motion.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion is adopted. Next up, Danette Bixler George, HR. How are you?
I'm Chairman. Thank you. Good morning, Chairman, board members. The Office of Human Resources has one motion for your consideration today relative to the hiring of one individual. Gabrielle Stanton has been selected as a casino compliance representative for the Rivers Casino Philadelphia. She has completed the interview process, background investigation, and drug screening, and is recommended for hire by Christopher Schroeder, Bureau Director for Casino Compliance. Unless you have any questions, I ask that the board consider a motion to approve this hiring action as indicated. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the board on this matter? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Dermody moves that the board approve the applicant for hire as proposed by the Human Resources Director.
Commissioner Smiler seconds.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The motion's adopted. Next up, Chief Counsel Doug Sherman. Good morning, Doug.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the board. Our first agenda items relate to final form rulemakings, which Assistant Chief Counsel Chad Zimmerman is here to present.
Morning, Commissioners. Chad Zimmerman from the Office of Chief Counsel. I'm good. How are you, Chairman? I have two final form rulemakings for you here today. The first is final form rulemaking number 125-226, which contains the final regulations for two forms of expanded gaming, casino simulcasting and fantasy contest. Casino simulcasting allows a category 2, 3, or 4 licensed facility to simulcast horse races from in-state and out-of-state sending tracks, set up a simulcasting area where these horse races can be wagered upon. The other form of expanded gaming in this rulemaking package is fantasy contest, which covers daily and season-long fantasy contests being operated by fantasy contest operators in the Commonwealth. Both regulatory or both forms of expanded gaming are based on the temporary regs in the proposed rulemaking that was previously adopted by the board. Minor changes were made pursuant to some comments received from the Independent Regulatory Commission on the proposed rulemaking. The board received no public comment on this proposed rulemaking. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. If not, I'd request a motion to adopt final form rulemaking number 125-226.
Thank you, Chad. Are there any questions or comments from the board for Chad? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Smiler moves that the board adopt the final form rulemaking number 125-226 regarding casino simulcasting and fantasy contests as described by the Office of Chief Counsel.
Is there a second?
Commissioner Regan seconds.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? The motion's adopted.
The next matter I have is final form rulemaking number 125-229, which contains the regulatory framework and oversight provisions for interactive gaming. Once again, these regulatory provisions are based largely on the temporary regulations and the proposed rulemaking previously adopted by the board. Minor administrative changes were made regarding certain oversight procedures and reporting procedures. Also, some additions were made at the request of our Director of Cybersecurity to beef up some cybersecurity measures that weren't included in the proposed rulemaking. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Once again, no public comments were received on this rulemaking, on the proposed rulemaking. Only comments from IRC were received, and those were addressed.
Any questions for Chad at this time? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Regan moves that the board adopt the final form rulemaking number 125-229 regarding interactive gaming as described by the Office of Chief Counsel.
Commissioner Mustio seconds.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Chad.
Next before the board for consideration today are 6 petitions. As addressed earlier, the first petition was scheduled for a public hearing today, but has been tentatively resolved pending the board's approval of a stipulation of settlement. The remaining petitions will be decided on the documentary record by agreement of the parties. And in each of these matters, the board has, in advance of this meeting, been provided with all documents filed prior to today. As stated, the first petition before the board for consideration is GW Cumberland OP Companies. Request to have the board declare the scope of the traffic impact study needed relative to the proposed Category 4 casino location just outside of Shippensburg in Cumberland County. The parties have now resolved the dispute pursuant to a proposed stipulation of settlement, wherein GW Cumberland agrees to the scope of the study requested by Enforcement Counsel, but to only pay a pro rata portion of any improvements needed in the extended study area and with a dollar cap on any such improvements. The settlement agreement also seeks to establish the monetary cap today, but the parties understand that the board is not willing to do that. And as a result, before the board for approval is a stipulation of settlement modified to exclude any exact dollar amount. The board's approval of this modified agreement will resolve the petition before the board and allow the project to continue to move forward. And the board matter is now ready for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments from anybody for Doug on this matter? Just one clarifying question. Our expectation is that on the current construction plan, that this Cat 4 thing would be ready to go, what, in a year, 9 months? What kind of timeline are we on here?
We still have a few more steps to complete a public input hearing and licensure, but essentially the project is free at their discretion to start moving forward, subject to the various licensing decisions that need to be done. I think they've talked about a potential 12-month period to become operational from the time they start the project.
Okay, thank you. If there's no other questions, may I have a motion on this matter?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Mustio moves that the board adopt the stipulation of settlement as modified.
Commissioner Logan seconds.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
The next petition before the board is a joint request by Golden Nugget Pennsylvania Incorporated and Golden Nugget Online Gaming LLC. Golden Nugget Pennsylvania is a qualified gaming entity and is an applicant for 2 interactive gaming certificates, one to offer interactive slot machines and one to offer interactive table games. Golden Nugget Online, an affiliate of Golden Nugget Pennsylvania, has applied for an interactive gaming license and was originally supposed to act as the interactive gaming operator on behalf of Golden Nugget Pennsylvania. However, the parties are now requesting that the board designate Golden Nugget Online Gaming as the qualified gaming entity instead of Golden Nugget Pennsylvania. This request stems from a corporate reorganization which places all of the company's interactive gaming operations under Golden Nugget Online. The parties agree that Golden Nugget Online meets the requirements to be considered as the qualified gaming entity, and specifically that it operates interactive gaming and sports wagering in New Jersey, that its license is in good standing there, and that it has applied or will apply in Pennsylvania for all appropriate principal and key employee licenses. The Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objection to Golden Nugget Pennsylvania substituting Golden Nugget Online as the qualified gaming entity, subject to certain conditions outlined in its answer. And this matter is now ready for the board's consideration.
Thank you, Doug. Any questions or comments for Doug? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Logan moves that the board grant the joint petition as described by the Office of Chief Counsel and with the conditions to be outlined in the board's order. I further move that the request for confidentiality be granted in part, as will also be outlined in the board's order.
Commissioner Canolo seconds.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
Next before the board is TDN Money Systems, request to waive its requirement to file an audited annual financial statement for 2020. By way of background, TDN Money Systems is a distributor and servicer of gaming equipment, supplies, ticket sorting machines, and currency handling machines. They were issued a slot machine supplier license in 2006 and a table game supplier license in 2010. Both licenses expired on March 30th of the year 2020. In September of 2019, prior to the expiration of its supplier licenses, TDN filed a slot machine manufacturer designee license application. A designee license will allow TDN to continue to perform the services it currently provides in Pennsylvania with lower application and renewal fees. The Board of Licensing has allowed TDN to continue to operate under its expired supplier license based upon its filing of the new designee license application. TDN now requests that the board waive its statutory obligation under the Gaming Act to file an audited financial statement for 2020, citing financial hardships associated with the COVID-19 pandemic and the shutdown of the casinos for periods of time. The Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objection to TDN's request, positing that since TDN is in a window of time between active licensure, the statutory requirement does not apply to it. It is noted, however, that TDN continues to operate under its expired licenses during the review of its designee license application, and even as a designee licensee, TDN will be required to file an audited financial statement under the provisions of the Gaming Act. In essence, there's no discretion here with the board on the issue of requiring the audited financial statements. This matter is now ready for the board's consideration. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions or comments from the board on this matter? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Canolo move that the board denies TDN Money System petition for waiver of requestment to submit audit financial statement as the board lacks the ability to waive the statutory obligation.
Commissioner Dermody seconds.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? The motion's adopted.
Next before the board is Novomatic AG's petition seeking board approval of a transfer of 20% ownership in the parent company, Novo Invest Gmbh. Novomatic AG is a licensed manufacturer of slot machines, table games, video gaming terminals, and sports wagering equipment. Novo Invest Gmbh is a registered affiliate of Novomatic AG. Novo Invest Gmbh is wholly owned by Johann Groff. Mr. Groff is seeking to transfer through trust and donation agreements, which were entered into in December 2020, a total of 20% of his ownership of Novo Invest. Rizard Presch and Birgit Wimmer, who currently manage Novo Invest and are licensed by the board as VGT principals, will each receive a 5% interest. Mr. Groff will also be transferring 10% ownership interest to his son, Thomas Groff, whose principal license is now pending before the board. The Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objection to the request, subject to conditions outlined in its answer, and the matter of approving the transfer of interest is now ready for the board's consideration.
Are there any questions or comments from the board on this matter?
Mr. Chairman,
Oh, I'm sorry. Go, Sean.
I guess my only question, the second individual, how about if something arises with his license and he cannot be licensed? Should we wait till he's licensed?
The requirement at that time, if there would be a problem, would be that they would have to divest and reverse course.
Okay, thanks, Doug.
Are there any other questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Dermody moves that the board grant Novomatic's petition for approval of an ownership change as described by the Office of Chief Counsel. And I further move that the parties' requests that certain information be maintained as confidential be granted.
Commissioner Smiley seconds.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
The next matter before the board is Bradley Huber's petition requesting removal from the board's involuntary exclusion list. By way of background, in March of 2017, Mr. Huber was banned from Rivers, Pittsburgh, after he was found in possession of drugs on the gaming floor. Thereafter, in August of 2017, Mr. Huber attempted to gain entrance to the Rivers Casino knowing that he had been banned. When stopped by security, he became aggressive and disorderly, resulting in his being criminally charged with trespass. Also in 2017, Mr. Huber had been banned from the Meadows Casino for engaging in fighting at that facility. As a result of these occurrences, in January of 2018, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a petition requesting that Mr. Huber be placed on the board's involuntary exclusion list. A hearing was held, and ultimately the board issued an order in October of 2018, placing Mr. Huber on the exclusion list for a period of 2 years, after which he could request removal from the list. During the 2018 proceedings before the board, evidence was placed in the record showing that Mr. Huber was undergoing substance abuse treatment, which he believes was the basis for his prior bad acts. Mr. Huber filed a request for removal from the list in January of this year, which is over 2 years since he's been placed on the list. And he has indicated that he continues his treatment for substance abuse, averse that he's maintained sobriety, and he's also been gainfully employed. In support of his petition, he provided documentation of his treatment and employment. So thus, almost 2.5 years after being placed on the exclusion list without any indication of any further problems, OEC has reviewed his petition, has no objection to Mr. Huber's removal, and this is the request now ready for the board's consideration.
Thanks, Doug. Any questions or comments from the board on this matter? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Smiley moves that the board grant Bradley Huber's petition for removal from the PGCB's involuntary exclusion list as described by the Office of Chief Counsel.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
And the final petition before the board is another request for removal from the involuntary exclusion list. Between December 13th and 16th of 2015, Jacob Alexander, who was 19 years old at the time, entered Sands Bethworks, which is now Wind Creek, multiple times by providing a false identification to security. He spent almost 3 hours on the gaming floor, actively gamed at tables, and consumed alcohol. On December 16th, 2015, he again attempted to enter the casino through the hotel entrance, and security questioned the validity of his ID. State police were contacted and found the ID to be fake. Mr. Alexander was permanently evicted from the casino and charged with a summary offense. On May 25th of 2016, subsequent to a petition filed by the Office of Enforcement Counsel, or pursuant to a petition filed by Enforcement Counsel, the board placed Mr. Alexander on the exclusion list until at least his 22nd birthday, at which time he could request to be removed from the list. Mr. Alexander is now 24 years old and is requesting removal from the exclusion list. OEC has no objection to the request as there's no evidence that he has violated the act or committed any other bad acts in the interim. This matter is now ready for the board's consideration.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments for Doug on this matter?
Doug, in the previous case, in this case, the individuals were evicted from the casino. This just takes them off our list. It's up to the casino, right, to decide if they can get back in?
Yes, the board's decision would bar him from all Pennsylvania casinos. The casino, excuse me, has a common law right to evict people from their own premises. If they want to let them back in, they can do so.
Are there any other questions on this matter? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Chairman, Commissioner Regan moves that the board grant Jacob Alexander's petition for removal from the PGCB's involuntary exclusion list as described by the Office of Chief Counsel.
Commissioner Mustio seconds.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
Next, we have withdrawals and surrenders as well as reports and recommendations presented by Deputy Chief Counsel Steve Cook.
Good morning. The next matter before the board today pertains to several unopposed petitions to withdraw the applications or surrender the credentials of the following individuals and businesses: Koringal Holdings, Caraco, NV, Koringal Holdings, BV, International Turf Acquisition Company, ITAC LLC, Fantasy Draft LLC, Unlimited Imagination LLC, Fantasy Draft Player Funds LLC, Dragon Stevanovsky, Robert Stevanovsky, Stephen Harris Krumboltz, Timothy Lewis Weisbrod, Stephen Gerard Wheeler, RP2DK LLC, Rain Partners 2 LP, John Ravitch, the Donald L. Carano Family Trust, Recreational Enterprises Incorporated, Cindy Lynn Carano, Rhonda K. Carano, Jean Robert Carano, John James Frankovich, Glenn Thomas Carano, James Barry Hawkins, Michael E. Pengram, Robert Bradley Muchu, Timothy A. Isley, James Nelson, Shay Burka, David Hammond, Charles P. Cohen, Susan D'Amata, Encompass Development and Design, Encompass Develop, Design and Construct, LLC, R. Edward Gordon, Marcus Alexander Hoy, Rebecca Kenny, Scott McClintock, Christopher Wilson, and Per Helberg. The Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objections to any of these withdrawals or surrenders, and as a result, if the board is inclined to grant them, each of these persons would be withdrawing without any prejudice to their reapplication in the future, and these matters are now all ripe for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments from the board to Steve on this matter? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Mustio moves that the board issue orders to approve the withdrawals and surrenders as described by the Office of Chief Counsel.
Commissioner Logan seconds.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
Next before the board for consideration are 4 reports and recommendations received from the Office of Hearings and Appeals. These reports and recommendations, along with the complete evidentiary record, have been provided to the board in advance of this meeting. And additionally, each of the persons that are the subject of these reports and recommendations have been notified that the board would be taking the matter up today and that they had the ability to call into this meeting and briefly address the board. The first report and recommendation pertains to Jacob Reynolds. Mr. Reynolds holds a gaming employee occupation permit and has previously worked as a table games dealer at the Mount Airy Casino. On March 2nd, 2020, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a complaint to suspend Mr. Reynolds' gaming employee occupation permit after it was discovered that he'd been charged with a felony DUI. A hearing in this matter was held on December 8th, 2020. OEC appeared offering testimonial and documentary evidence. The evidence that they provided showed that Mr. Reynolds was charged in late 2019 with his 3rd DUI, which is categorized as a felony. Mr. Reynolds' 2 prior DUIs both occurred prior to his licensure with the board. Mr. Reynolds appeared at that hearing pro se. He chose not to testify at length, but did provide documentation outlining his treatment efforts in dealing with alcohol abuse issues. He further indicated that he believed he had pled guilty to a felony DUI for his 3rd offense rather than he pled guilty to a misdemeanor rather than a felony DUI. As a result of his stating that he was no longer charged with a felony, the record remained open for 30 days. During that period of time, Mr. Reynolds provided proof from the court that indeed he did plead to a misdemeanor offense rather than a felony offense for his 3rd DUI. Taking all of this evidence into consideration, including that the charge was pled to a misdemeanor and that Mr. Mr. Reynolds was in treatment. The hearing officer recommended that OEC's request to revoke this permit or suspend this permit, has be denied, and that is the recommendation before the board, that OEC's request be denied.
Okay. Any questions or comments on this matter? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Canola move that the board adopts the report and recommendation issued by the Office of Hearing and Appeals regarding suspension of Jacob Rental's gaming employee occupation permit, and that Mr. Rental's permit not be suspended.
Dermody seconds the motion.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
Jason Nguyen is the next report and recommendation before the board today. On August 2nd, 2018, Mr. Nguyen was issued a gaming employee permit to work as a fire suppression technician for Johnson Controls Fire Protection LP, a credentialed gaming service provider. On October 6, 2020, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a complaint seeking to revoke Mr. Nguyen's permit after receiving notice that he'd been charged with misdemeanor, felony, and summary offenses following a traffic violation, which led to a high-speed chase and ultimately an automobile crash. Specifically, this individual was charged and pled guilty to DUI, fleeing and attempting to elude a police officer, which is a felony, and driving at an unsafe speed. A hearing in this matter was held on November 2nd, 2020. Enforcement Counsel appeared offering testimonial and documentary evidence. Mr. Nguyen also appeared pro se and testified on his own behalf, admitting to his actions, expressing remorse, and stating that he hoped that he would be able to keep his permit in place. The report and recommendation ultimately issued after taking all of this evidence into consideration was that Mr. Nguyen's gaming employee permit must be revoked, as his felony conviction now prohibits his holding it under the provisions of the Gaming Act, and that is in fact the case, and that is the recommendation before the board.
Any questions or comments on this matter? Hearing none, may I have a motion to adopt?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Dermody moves that the board adopt the report and recommendation issued by the Office of Hearings and Appeals regarding the revocation of Jason Nguyen's gaming employee occupation permit as described by the Office of Chief Counsel.
Commissioner Smiler seconds.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
The next before the board is the report and recommendation pertaining to Tam Nguyen. In January of 2018, Mr. Nguyen was issued a gaming employee occupation permit and worked as a table games dealer at Sugar House Casino, which is now Rivers, Philadelphia. On February 19th, 2020, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a complaint to revoke Mr. Nguyen's gaming employee occupation permit after it was alleged that on September 6th, 2019, while dealing Pai-Gow tiles, he failed to collect losing wagers, failed to shuffle hands correctly, and dealt tiles to the wrong player on 4 separate occasions. He also allowed one patron to cheat by improperly switching bets, and ultimately his actions on that day cost Rivers, Philadelphia, $9,480. He was suspended from his employment there and later resigned from his position in lieu of termination. He was also charged with criminal offenses and entered into an ARD program relative to those offenses. Mr. Nguyen requested a hearing on OEC's request to revoke his permit. However, he did not attend that hearing and it was held in his absence. Ultimately, OEC put on evidence of the offensive conduct, and thereafter a report and recommendation was issued recommending that Mr. Nguyen's permit be revoked, and that is the recommendation before the board.
Any questions or comments from the board on this matter? Hearing none, may I have a motion to adopt?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Smiler moves that the board adopt the report and recommendation issued by the Office of Hearings and Appeals regarding the revocation of Tam Nguyen's gaming employee occupation permit as described by the Office of Chief Counsel.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The motion's adopted.
The final report and recommendation before the board today pertains to Mahesh Dachapalli. On July 15th, 2020, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a petition requesting to place Mr. Dachapali on the board's involuntary exclusion list after it was alleged that on September 1st, 2019, he left his 10-year-old son in a vehicle at the Valley Forge Casino Resort for approximately 1 hour while he gamed. Valley Forge has also permanently evicted this individual from their property. A hearing in this matter was held on January 5th, 2021. OEC appeared and presented testimony and documentary evidence in support of their petition. Mr. Dachapali also appeared and testified on his own behalf, admitting to leaving his son in the vehicle, ultimately stating that he was unaware he shouldn't or couldn't do this. He also testified that he only intended to go into the casino to use some promotional play he knew he had. Thereafter, he hit a jackpot and had to stand in line waiting to cash his jackpot out at the casino cage. He additionally testified that he was repeatedly in contact with his son by cell phone while he was away from the vehicle. OEC's testimony and video evidence, however, showed that there were substantial inconsistencies with Mr. Dachapali's testimony. Consequently, the report and recommendation issued by the hearing officer recommends that Mr. Dachapali be placed on the board's involuntary exclusion list, and this matter is now ripe for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Regan moves that the board adopt the report and recommendations issued by the Office of Hearings and Appeals regarding the placement of Mahesh Dachapali on the Pgcb involuntary exclusion list as described by the Office of Chief Counsel, and that Ms. Dachapali be placed in the board's involuntary exclusion list.
Commissioner Mustia seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
And that concludes the matters of the Office of Chief Counsel.
Thanks, Doug. Next up, we have Director Sue Hensel, Bureau of Licensing. Good morning, Sue.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman Barish and members of the board. Before the board today will be license consideration of one slot machine manufacturer and one sports wagering operator. In addition, there will be 934 principals and key gaming and non-gaming employees, as well as qualifier applicants. Finally, there will be consideration of 21 gaming service provider applicants. The first matter for your consideration is the slot machine manufacturer license for Acres Manufacturing Company. Acres Manufacturing Company has its principal place of business in Las Vegas, Nevada, and it manufactures a system that facilitates cashless slot machine wagering. The Bureau of Investigations and Enforcement has completed its investigation, and the Bureau of Licensing has provided you with a background investigation and suitability report. I have provided you with a draft order and ask that the board consider the order to approve the slot machine manufacturer license for Acres Manufacturing Company.
The Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objection.
Thank you, Cyrus. Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Mustia moves that the board grant the slot machine manufacturer license as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Logan seconds.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
Next for your consideration is a sports wagering operator license for SB Tech Malta Limited. SB Tech Malta Limited is a Malta-based business that offers online and retail sports wagering technologies and services. The Bureau of Investigations and Enforcement has completed its investigation, and the Bureau of Licensing has provided you with a background investigation and suitability report. Next, I have provided you with a draft order, and I ask that the board consider the order to approve the sports wagering operator license.
The Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objection.
Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Smiler moves that the board grant the sports wagering operator license as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Dermody seconds.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The motion's adopted.
Next are approvals for one-year license extensions for the following VGT establishments. Last Minute Mart Inc., Butler Road, doing business as Last Minute Mart, located at 2985 New Butler Road in Newcastle, and Last Minute Mart Inc., Montgomery Avenue, doing business as Last Minute Mart, located at 511 Montgomery Avenue in Newcastle. Both establishments were granted one-year conditional licenses approximately 1 year ago. Under the Gaming Act and board regulations, the board is authorized to extend the licenses for an additional 1 year for good cause. In each case, the background investigation and suitability report process for the company is continuing. I have provided you with draft orders and ask that you consider the orders to grant the 1 year extensions.
The Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objection.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Logan moves that the board grant the extension approval for the conditional video gaming terminal establishment licenses described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Canolo seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion adopted.
In addition, there are principal, key employee, and qualifier licenses for your consideration. Prior to this meeting, the Bureau of Licensing provided you with a proposed order for 33 principals, 14 key employees, and 2 qualifiers. I ask that the board consider the order approving these licenses and qualifications.
The Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objection.
Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Canolo move that the board grants the principal and key employee licensees as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Dermody seconds the motion.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The motion's adopted.
There are also temporary licenses. Prior to this meeting, the Bureau of Licensing provided you with an order regarding the issuance of temporary licenses for 1 principal and 8 key employees. I ask that the board consider the order approving these licenses.
The Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objection.
Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Dermody moves that the board grant the temporary principal and key employee credentials as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Smiler seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
Next are gaming permits and non-gaming registrations. Prior to this meeting, the Bureau of Licensing provided you with a list of 639 individuals to whom the Bureau has granted temporary or full occupation permits, and 202 individuals to whom the Bureau has granted registrations under the authority delegated to the Bureau of Licensing. I ask that the board consider a motion approving the order.
The Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objection.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Commissioner Smiler moves that the board approve the applications for gaming employee occupation permits and non-gaming employee registrations as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion's adopted.
There are also recommendations of denial for 4 gaming and 1 non-gaming employee applicants and 1 VGT establishment. The applicants were notified that they were being recommended for denial and failed to request hearings within the specified timeframes. The Bureau of Licensing has provided you with orders addressing each of these applicants who the Office of Enforcement Counsel has recommended for denial. I ask that the board consider the orders approving these denials.
Enforcement Counsel continues to request denial in each instance.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Regan moves that the board deny the gaming employee occupation permit, non-gaming employee registration, and video gaming terminal establishment applications as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Mustillo seconds.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
The next matters for your consideration are withdrawal requests. In each case, the license permit or registration is no longer required. For today's meeting, I have provided the board with 5 key, 20 gaming, and 10 non-gaming employee applicants for withdrawal. I ask that the board consider the orders approving these withdrawals.
The Enforcement Counsel has no objection.
Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Mustillo moves that the board grant the withdrawal of key gaming and non-gaming employee applications as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Logan seconds.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Next, we have an order to certify the following gaming service providers: LexisNexis Risk Solutions FL Inc., McGregor Industries Inc., Reflection Window and Wall LLC, and Southern New Jersey Steel Company. I have provided you with a draft order and ask that the board consider the order to certify these applicants.
The Enforcement Council has no objection.
Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Logan moves the board approve the gaming service provider certifications as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Nodal seconds.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All opposed? The motion's adopted.
Finally, for your consideration, our gaming service provider registrations. The Bureau of Licensing provided you with an order and an attached list of 17 registered gaming service provider applicants. I ask that the board consider the order registering these gaming service provider applicants.
The Enforcement Council has no objection.
Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Canola move that the board approve the gaming service provider registration as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Dermody seconds.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
That concludes the matters of the Bureau of Licensing.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, Cyrus Petrie.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the board. The Office of Enforcement Counsel will present 15 matters today for the board's consideration, in which we will request the approval of 1 revocation, 6 suspensions, and 8 involuntary exclusions. The next 7 matters on the agenda consist of enforcement actions in which the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed complaints seeking the revocation or suspension of gaming employee occupation permits and non-gaming employee registrations issued by the board. The complaints have been filed with the board's Office of Hearings and Appeal and properly served upon the individual named in each complaint. The individual named in each complaint failed to respond within 30 days as required by board regulation. As a result, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a request for default judgment in each instance and properly served the same upon each respondent. Therefore, the facts in each complaint are deemed admitted. All filed documents have been provided to the board, and the matters are presently ripe for the board's consideration. Deputy Chief Enforcement Counsel Dustin Miller will provide a brief summary of the facts and make a request for the appropriate board.
Good morning, Chairman Barish, members of the board. Dustin Miller on behalf of the Office of Enforcement Counsel. The next matter on the agenda is a request to suspend the gaming employee occupation permit issued to Shamira Branch. Ms. Branch was previously employed as a sportsbook writer at Harrah's Philadelphia Casino and Racetrack. The Bureau of Investigations and Enforcement was notified that Ms. Branch was arrested and criminally charged by Chester City Police Department. The police conducted a traffic stop on a vehicle operated by Ms. Branch, and she was charged with DUI. While being processed, Ms. Branch became increasingly confrontational and caused damage to a holding cell. Ms. Branch was criminally charged with DUI, duties at a stop sign, and multiple counts of institutional vandalism. The charges remain pending. Ms. Branch previously resigned from her position at Harrah's and is not currently employed in Pennsylvania's gaming industry. This time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requested the gaming employee occupation permit issued to Shamira Branch be suspended.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Dermody moves that the board approve the suspension of Shamira Branch's gaming employee occupation permit as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Smiler seconds.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
The next matter on the agenda is a request to suspend the non-gaming employee registration issued to Michael Gates. Mr. Gates was previously employed as an EVS attendant at Valley Forge Casino Resort. The Bureau of Investigations and Enforcement was notified that Mr. Gates was arrested and criminally charged by the Philadelphia Police Department. Mr. Gates was criminally charged with burglary, criminal trespass, terroristic threats, recklessly endangering another person, simple assault, and criminal mischief. Mr. Gates had previously been terminated by Valley Forge and is not currently employed in Pennsylvania's gaming industry. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requested the non-gaming employee registration issued to Michael Gates be suspended.
Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Smiler moves that the board approve the suspension of Michael Gates' non-gaming employee registration as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is the suspension of the gaming employee occupation permit issued to Isaiah Johnson. Mr. Johnson was previously employed as a security officer at Rivers Casino, Pittsburgh. The Bureau of Investigations and Enforcement was notified that Mr. Johnson was arrested and charged with various drug charges, including possession with intent to deliver heroin, possession of marijuana, and possession of drug paraphernalia. These charges are currently pending. Mr. Johnson is not currently employed in Pennsylvania's gaming industry. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests that the board suspend the gaming employee occupation permit issued to Isaiah Johnson.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Regan moves that the board approve the suspension of Isaiah Johnson's gaming employee occupation permit as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Mustio seconds.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is the revocation of the gaming employee occupation permit issued to Sierra McTurk. Ms. McTurk was previously employed as a security officer at Parks Casino. Ms. McTurk assisted, aided, and abetted an underage individual who utilized non-legitimate identification in attempting to access the gaming floor at Rivers Casino, Philadelphia. Ms. McTurk was terminated from her employment due to this incident. Ms. McTurk is not currently employed in Pennsylvania's gaming industry. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests that the board revoke the gaming employee occupation permit issued to Sierra McTurk.
Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Mustio moves that the board approve the revocation of Sierra McTurk's gaming employee occupation permit as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Logan seconds.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is the suspension of the gaming employee occupation permit issued to Travell Marin Lennon. Mr. Marin Lennon was previously employed as a security officer at Harrah's Philadelphia Casino and Racetrack. The Bureau of Investigations and Enforcement received notification that Mr. Marin Lennon was charged with felony, forgery, and identity theft, among other charges, by the Pennsylvania State Police. These charges are currently pending. Mr. Marin Lennon is not currently employed in Pennsylvania's gaming industry. This time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requested the board suspend the gaming employee occupation permit issued to Travell Marin Lennon.
Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Logan moves that the board approve the suspension of Travell Marin Lennon's gaming employee occupation permit as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Knoll seconds.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
The next matter on the agenda is a request to suspend the gaming employee occupation permit issued to Tanner Reichhoff. Mr. Reichhoff was previously employed as a dealer at Lady Luck Casino. The Bureau of Investigations and Enforcement was notified that Mr. Reichhoff was arrested and criminally charged by the Pennsylvania State Police in connection with the theft of several firearms. Mr. Reichhoff was criminally charged with burglary, conspiracy, theft by unlawful taking, and receiving stolen property. The charges remain pending. Mr. Reichhoff is not currently employed in Pennsylvania's gaming industry. This time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requested the gaming employee occupation permit issued to Tanner Reichhoff be suspended.
Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Knoll will move that the board approve the suspension of Tanner Reichhoff gaming employee occupation permit as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Dermody seconds the motion.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is the suspension of the gaming employee occupation permit issued to Janiece Watson. Ms. Watson was previously employed as a security officer at Harrah's Philadelphia Racetrack and Casino. The Bureau of Investigations and Enforcement received notification that Ms. Watson was arrested and charged with multiple felonies, including aggravated assault, strangulation, and endangering the welfare of children. These charges are currently pending. Ms. Watson is not currently employed in Pennsylvania's gaming industry. This time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requested the board suspend the gaming employee occupation permit issued to Janiece Watson.
Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Dermody moves that the board approve the suspension of Janiece Watson's gaming employee occupation permit as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Smiley seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
The remaining matters on the agenda consist of enforcement actions in which the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed petitions seeking the involuntary exclusion of individuals whose presence in a licensed facility are inimical to the interests of the Commonwealth and are licensed gaming therein. In each instance, the petition for exclusion has been filed with the board's Office of Hearings and Appeal and properly served upon the individual named in the petition. The individual named in each petition failed to respond within 30 days as required by board regulation. As a result, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a request for default judgment in each instance and properly served the same upon each individual. Therefore, all facts in each petition are deemed admitted. All filed documents have been provided to the board, and the matters are presently ripe for the board's consideration. In each instance, if the board orders the proposed exclusion, each individual's photo, personal identifiers, and a summary of the inimical conduct will be placed on the board's public website. Once again, Deputy Chief Enforcement Counsel Dustin Miller will provide a brief summary of the facts and make a request for the appropriate board action.
Dustin Miller on behalf of the Office of Enforcement Counsel. The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is a request to place Terry Banks on the board's involuntary exclusion list. Mr. Banks stole a credit card from another patron at Valley Forge Casino. Further, Mr. Banks has numerous past incidents which interfered with operations at Pennsylvania casinos. Mr. Banks had previously been permanently evicted from Valley Forge for a past incident when this latest incident occurred. He was criminally charged for his actions. This time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests that the board place Terry Banks on the board's involuntary exclusion list.
Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Smiley moves that the board approve the addition of Terry Banks to the Pgcb involuntary exclusion list as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is the petition to place Sean Heinrich on the board's excluded persons list. Mr. Heinrich left his 10-year-old child in a vehicle in the Rivers Casino Pittsburgh parking garage for approximately 14 minutes while he gamed in the facility. Mr. Heinrich was taken into custody on unrelated charges at the time of the incident. Mr. Heinrich was permanently evicted from Rivers Casino Pittsburgh for his actions. This time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requested the board place Sean Heinrich on the board's involuntary exclusion list.
Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Regan moves that the board approve the addition of Sean Heinrich to the Pgcb involuntary exclusion list as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Mustillo seconds.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is a request to place Victor Wong on the board's involuntary exclusion list. Mr. Wong, in the course of his employment at Valley Forge Casino Resort as a player development executive, utilized the player's card of a patron without permission to obtain the patron's complimentary benefits and use them for himself. Mr. Wong was terminated from Valley Forge for his actions. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests that the board place Victor Wong on the board's involuntary exclusion list.
Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Mustillo moves that the board approve the addition of Victor Wong to the Pgcb involuntary exclusion list as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Logan seconds.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is a request to place Abdel Mubdi on the board's involuntary exclusion list. Mr. Mubdi engaged in table game play at Rivers Casino Pittsburgh. While at a craps table, a table games dealer informed Mr. Mubdi that to remain on the gaming floor, he had to comply with the posted signage and the Commonwealth's COVID-19 pandemic instructions and wear his facial mask correctly. Mr. Mubdi then cursed and spoke rudely to the dealer, went told such language would not be tolerated, he again swore at the dealer and threatened to overturn gaming tables. Pennsylvania State Police arrived and escorted Mr. Mubdy to the on-site barracks. Pennsylvania State Police identified Mr. Mubdy and learned that there was an active arrest warrant for him. Rivers issued a lifetime ban to Mr. Mubdy prior to his transportation to the Allegheny County Jail. During the jail intake process, 14 baggies of cocaine and 1 baggie of marijuana were found on his person. Pennsylvania State Police additionally charged him with possession with intent to deliver, 2 counts of possession of contraband, possession of marijuana, and possession of drug paraphernalia, and driving under the influence, or driving with a DUI suspended license. These charges are pending in the Allegheny Court of Common Pleas. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests that the board place Abdul Mubdy on the board's involuntary exclusion list.
Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Logan moves the board approve the addition of Abdul Mubdy to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Knoll seconds.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is a request to place Patrick Olson on the board's involuntary exclusion list. Mr. Olson presented fraudulent bank checks to Rivers Casino Philadelphia in exchange for gaming checks. As a result, Mr. Olson was charged and pled guilty to forgery. He has been permanently evicted from Rivers Philadelphia for his actions. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requested the board place Patrick Olson on the board's involuntary exclusion list.
Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Knoll move that the board approves the addition of Patrick Olson to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Dermody seconds.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is a request to place Frank Pasquino on the board's involuntary exclusion list. Mr. Pasquino was involved in an illegal sports wagering operation in Allegheny and Westmoreland counties. As a result, Mr. Pasquino was criminally charged by the Office of Attorney General for his role in the operation. Mr. Pasquino pled guilty to 1 count of set up a lottery or numbers game, first-degree misdemeanor. Mr. Pasquino had a history of gaming at both the Meadows Racetrack and Casino and also Rivers Casino, Pittsburgh. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requested the board place Frank Pasquino on the involuntary exclusion list.
Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Dermody moves that the board approve the addition of Frank Pasquino to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Smiler seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is a request to place Michael Siciliano on the board's involuntary exclusion list. Mr. Siciliano stole a wallet from another patron at Valley Forge Casino Resort. Mr. Siciliano had previously been permanently evicted from Valley Forge for a past incident. Valley Forge issued him another permanent eviction, and he was criminally charged for his actions. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requested the board place Michael Siciliano on the board's involuntary exclusion list.
Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Smiler moves that the board approve the addition of Michael Siciliano to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
The final matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is a request to place Felicia Williams on the board's involuntary exclusion list. Ms. Williams passed 25 counterfeit $100 bills at a gaming table at Parks Casino, gamed for a few minutes, and then took her chips and departed the area. The bills were later discovered to have matching serial numbers indicating that they were counterfeit. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requested the board place Felicia Williams on the board's involuntary exclusion list.
Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Regan moves that the board approve the addition of Felicia Williams to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Mustio seconds.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
Thank you. That concludes our business.
Thank you, Cyrus. I believe that concludes today's business. The next public meeting of the board will be held on Wednesday, April 21st at 10 a.m. Given the continued uncertainties, I would advise that all interested parties monitor the board's website for the latest information as to how that meeting will be conducted. May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Mustillo moves for adjournment.
Logan seconds.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion is adopted and we are adjourned. Thank you all for your participation.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman.